Hello, my name is John Deedy, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and host of the Maryland State Politics podcast. Today on my show, I have Baltimore County State's Attorney Scott Shellenberger. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Glad to do this. My first question is, why are you running for reelection?
Well, I truly love the job that I have and the folks that work for me. I think we do a lot of good for Baltimore County. I was first elected in 2006, then again in 10, 14, 18, 22, and I'd love to be elected again in 26. I'm very dedicated to what we do in Baltimore County, and that is to keep the public safe. And I would like to do that for another 4 years and continue to keep the public safe.
What do you think is the biggest issue right now facing Baltimore County in the criminal justice situation?
Well, unfortunately, Baltimore County has a history of having a lot of domestic violence problems. Every year, almost half of our homicides are domestic related. And when I say domestic, I mean people who live in the same household, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, people who are together in a house. Um, and therefore, that's an issue that's been around for a long time. We continue to work very hard in that area. I have a full staff dedicated to doing nothing but domestic violence cases, 4 attorneys, 4 paralegals, 2 law clerks that work very hard on domestic violence cases. One of the interesting things that's taken place in the last couple of years is the advent of body cameras. And people may say, well, I don't understand how body cameras has changed domestic violence. Well, just think of a Friday night, 2 o'clock in the morning, a 911 call comes in which a woman, and typically a woman, is very upset and excited that she's been abused. So that excited utterance is admissible in court because there's a hearsay exception for that excited utterance. When the officer gets to the location and the woman is crying and talking very excited and then points to a bruise on their face, that video also and audio also comes in as an excited utterance, and the video comes in because it was witnessed by the police officer. On Tuesday morning, when that victim calls my office and says, I don't want to go forward with my case, we say, please come to court. We want to verify that she's not being forced, but we can go forward with that case without the victim. And we do go forward. We're very aggressive and we do win those cases.
Okay. One of the biggest problems a lot of people have talked about in the last couple of years is related to juvenile crime. And part of the problem in the area of juvenile crime is you have people with underdeveloped brains doing a lot of stupid things. How are you trying to deal with the issue of juvenile crime as far as those cases coming through? There's an age question a lot of people have related to, 16 versus 14 doing something stupid versus 12 doing something stupid.
Right. So over a year and a half ago, because the juvenile system, in my opinion, was broken, I went down to Annapolis and met with the governor. There were only 3 of us in the room, the governor, myself, and another staffer. And I said that the head of juvenile services at the time, Vincent Giraldi, had to go. It took a little bit and it took some conversations, but eventually he did make that move and has installed a new person who I've known for nearly 20 years. I'm willing to give everyone a chance to improve the juvenile justice system. When I was in Annapolis talking to the governor, the other thing I said is we need to pour money and services into our juvenile system, because if we can help someone when they do a minor crime at the age of 12, 13, or 14, then I don't have to sit with a victim whose loved one has been murdered by a 17 or 18-year-old juvenile. And so I advocate all the time, and you can actually see in Annapolis me on video asking the legislature to do more for juvenile crime to help try and stop things. Now, that having been said, Maryland has had a structure for decades where if you are 15 or older and commit a murder and some other very serious sex offenses, you can be treated as an adult. And the most telling example of that is Nicholas Browning, who was 15 when he killed his mother, his father, and his two brothers. Four individuals dead. We were able to prove that he planned that murder, plotted it out, tried to give himself an alibi by sleeping over at his friend's house and then sneaking out. At the time Nick Browning was 15 and killed those four people, he was over 6 foot tall, 180 pounds, and had to have been very intelligent and good schools to get away, almost get away with what he did. We were able to keep him in adult court. Now, Maryland law allowed he and his lawyers to have a hearing to try and go back to juvenile court, and that was denied. And he is now serving 2 life sentences in a very secure Division of Correction facility. That is an example of why Maryland needs to keep certain laws on the books, that when we have these outliers like Nick Browning, we need to be able to prosecute them as adults because he was a very dangerous individual. Now, the other place where we get some criticism is 16 or 17-year-olds can be charged as an adult if they commit a carjacking. But again, imagine if you are a young woman at the Safeway and you're getting in your car and your child is in the back seat in a car seat, and someone comes up to you with a gun, forces you out of the car and drives your car away with that child. We had a case within the last 2 years where they stopped the car down the street, put the child seat on the sidewalk, and then kept going. I can't think of much more terrifying a crime than that would be. And therefore, when you commit that crime at 16 and 17, I believe you should be treated as an adult. Again, you can try and waive back to juvenile court. You'll get a judge, you'll get a fair hearing. But, I believe that that's a very adult crime.
Do you think is the best deterrent as far as dealing with crime?
I think the best deterrent is catching people who commit crime and putting them in jail for an appropriate period of time. Nick Browning is in jail for 2 life sentences. He is not going to be able to hurt anyone again, hopefully ever, but at least for a very, very, very long time. I was in court just 2 weeks ago with a person named Alfonso Hill. Alfonso Hill is doing 95 years in jail for not one, not two, but 8 rapes. He committed his first one in Baltimore City. Then he committed a number in Baltimore County. It was only the advent of DNA and our ability to have traced his DNA back to him that we got 8 more convictions in Baltimore County for Alfonso Hill. Alfonso Hill should never, ever be out of prison again. And that's what he was trying to do the other day when we were in court. He wants to file a motion to modify and try and get an early release from jail. And what I say about fighting crime is keeping Alfonso Hill in jail for the rest of his life is the best way to deter crime from happening. And more importantly, to advertise and, well, not advertise, but make sure people know that if you commit these kind of crimes in Baltimore County, then you're going to be held accountable.
What kind of people basically compare Baltimore City, Baltimore County at times with crime? And a lot of people in the county say, oh, the crime has been brought in from the city. What have you noticed being the biggest difference between going from Marilyn Mosby to Ivan Bates on the issue of crime and the impact on Baltimore County? And how is your work relationship? How would you compare the work relationships you've had really between both individuals when it comes to the issue of criminal justice?
Well, I think one of the important things is for your viewers and listeners to know that I have a great relationship with Ivan Bates. Here's my speed dial, and there's a person named Ivan on there. He's been on there since the day he got elected. We communicate regularly, and our staffs communicate regularly with each other. Recently, I was at a meeting within the last 3 weeks over in Pikesville because we were seeing a lot of crime that were happening on both sides of the line, in the city and outside in the county. And it was wrapping back and forth over. We were all in a room together, precinct captains from both areas, state's attorney's offices from both areas, and started developing a plan on how to deal with the crime as it overlaps. Ivan has done a terrific job. For over a decade, there were over 300 homicides in Baltimore City, one year topping out at 353. Last year, they were at 201, which was an incredible accomplishment, which I believe a lot has to do with Ivan Bates and his staff. But what your folks need to know is last year, Baltimore County had 28 homicides, which is substantially less than Baltimore City, and our population is over 800,000 citizens. So we have a vastly larger population, a greater and smaller number of homicides that we continue to work on. But nonetheless, I commend Ivan Bates and his staff for the hard work they've done, and I just hope that they can continue to keep that homicide rate at a reasonable number. Now, you've asked about crime and clickovers. I just told you about Pikesville, but I can tell you we do get some crime from Baltimore City, but we have plenty of homegrown crime in Baltimore County. When I see a homicide, I typically will look at the defendant's address to see where they live, to see if that's a homegrown Baltimore County crime or whether the person came from somewhere else. And we get plenty of both.
What do you see is the biggest challenge for you in this race for reelection? Because you are running against two candidates that are women, but also are very well accomplished and qualified.
Correct. I am certainly not going to say, unlike 2022, that these two individuals are not qualified. The thing that you have to ask is the question is, have they ever run an office that is in charge of 65 lawyers? I have an office and I'm in charge of 65 lawyers. I have another 80 plus support staff that I've been running, and I have over $12 million budget that I put together every year and have to convince the county executive and the county council to fund it. I have to do these things at such a large level, and it certainly is a level at which they have never practiced. I believe maybe they've supervised 10 or 11 individuals, whereas I'm in the area of 140 plus that I've been supervising for years. It's the experience that matters. It's the experience that counts. And I think that's a very important aspect of all of this.
One of the big things that a lot of people strive for when it comes to endorsements, especially when running for reelection, is fraternal order of police endorsements. Do you feel that you will be able to get the endorsement of the Baltimore County Police as far as for running for reelection? And what would you say to them to convince them to endorse you?
I do believe I will get their endorsement. I believe I've earned it. I have a great relationship with the Fraternal Order of Police in Baltimore County. We work very hard together, and we know each other extremely well. That having been said, you may have recently seen that we have a list of officers for which there are some questions about their past. It's called either a do not call list or a must disclose list. And even though I have a great relationship with the police department and the Fraternal Order of Police, I do not overlook my obligation to make sure that we are doing the utmost to make sure we are providing with defense counsel all information that is fair in order to get to a just verdict. The worst thing that can happen than a family going through a trial now is going through another one 10 years from now because the state's attorney's office didn't do the right thing and disclose all information, even if it might hurt. And so while I have a great relationship with the police department, the chief of police, and the fraternal order of police, I never underestimate my obligations to justice and the court.
Last question I'll ask is this. The 2022 campaign, it was rough, the best way to describe it. And I could tell that by the end of the campaign, it was rough on you. Why would you run for re-election when after basically you went through a very difficult gauntlet in 2022 where a lot of people thought he got through that and this is probably going to be the last race you run? Why would you run again under that circumstance of how tough the last one was?
Well, we'll come back to where I started, and that is I love my job. I feel incredibly devoted to the citizens of Baltimore County. I am incredibly devoted to my staff. The other thing that I think is different from 2022 was you must recall that the world's richest man had given my opponent nearly $900,000. And so I was fighting a great deal of money. I'm not underestimating the fact that there will probably be some fundraising on behalf of my opponents, myself, but I do not believe it will be nearly the same as it was the last time. And more importantly, I love my job. I love what I do. I think I do a very good job. And I think this is such a big and important job that I'd like to do it 4 more years.
I want to thank you again for your time and good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much.